On behalf of myself, Andy Slater at PGI, and Simon and Vicky at Hunter Apparel, massive welcome to today. And what I will say is we are genuinely thrilled at the turnout that we've had and the calibre of people we've got in this room. Vicky's worked really, really hard, to be fair, harder than me. And we were talking just the other day and we were really humbled. You know, we're like, oh my God, we've got all these people coming and we're getting more and more support. So we know it's a very important subject. You know, it is very prevalent now. So no, from that point of view, you know, we're very, very grateful, and to obviously our wider colleagues as well, from Marcus and Duncan and everybody. So thanks very much. The aims of today really is, you know, to focus on the importance of the current epidemic of cancer among firefighters, which we obviously all know. And for us, it's a real great honour that, you know, as we gather here today to shed light on this like very, very pressing subject, and to basically explore, you know, in a collaborative way, some of the solutions that we can find. So with the epidemic of cancer among the firefighters, you know, the stark reality for us is going to demand our attention, collaboration and action. It's a challenge that affects not only the individuals who selflessly serve and their families, but of course, the effect that has on their own colleagues, families and wider communities, as we'll hear during some of our guest speakers. Throughout the seminar, we aim to sort of, what we're trying to do is trying to foster some engagement and foster some you know, conversations, and where we delve into the factors contributing to the increased cancer risks and explore the strategies to mitigate and prevent these risks. So we have a distinguished panel of experts, researchers and advocates that we're going to share our insights, experiences and hopefully our innovative approaches, as we saw with things like yesterday with our friends from Toxic Suppression, in what we can do. And it is about innovation. This is at the forefront of technology. We've got entrepreneurs in the room where at the end of the day, you know, this is how technology advances. If we look at all of the equipment that we use today, whether it's like BA, thermal imaging, whatever it might be, you know, where we were 20 years ago to where we are now. And it's the same with PPE, and it's very, very same with fighting these particulates. So it's, you know, with heartfelt gratitude that you're all here, and please, you know, nothing's off the table. We want to get, you know, plenty of conversations going, and feel free to speak up whenever you're ready. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Russell Shephard. I'm thrilled. Russell's made a massive effort. He flew in from Australia. They have their ISO meetings next week, but he's made the time to come and speak with us today. And as you can see, he's got the Australian Fire Medal. He's the Director of Standards and Strategic Procurement and the Chair of ISO, head of AFAC. I'm privileged to have known him for probably 17 years, I think now.
All right, good morning, and ladies and gentlemen, and nice to be here on a lovely cool morning. I've left nearly 40 degrees heat at home to come over here, but I love coming to the UK, and any opportunity is a great one. But this is a great cause, and it's a great opportunity to share some of my knowledge and experience, and share with you, and try to, I guess, challenge you perhaps in some ways, but also to get your ideas about what we need to be doing, and in particular what we're doing at an international level to try and assist in reducing firefighter cancers from a PPE and an ISO perspective. So what I thought I would do is, Andy's kindly done the introduction, so I'm Director of Standards and Strategic Procurement at AFAC. Now, AFAC, of course, is a national organisation, and it is similar to the National Fire Chiefs Council, if you like. We're the main body for representing fire and emergency services across Australasia, which includes New Zealand and a lot of the islands and etc. as well. So what I thought I'd do to start with, and excuse me if I'm not facing everyone at a time, it's a bit difficult in a room like this, but I'm so pleased to see everyone here, is I thought I would take you through and give you a little bit of an introduction to start with in relation to what is AFAC and what we do, and how that all links together in relation to our area of responsibility. So we have, what I'm trying to do is put it put a bit of a presentation for you today that will actually look at a whole range of things. I'm going to try and just give you that little introduction to AFAC. How do we use PPE standards? Introduction to the relevant PPE standards. I'll put together a document for you that it is going to be, Andy will make sure that it gets out to everyone. What I've done is I've gone through and looked at all the standards, the relevant standards that relate to PPE in our industry, but with a specific focus of the UK and the European standards, etc. Some of the NFPA standards, and so I've included those in a document, and I'll talk about those a little bit when we get to it as well. What we're doing to reduce firefighter exposures, I'll talk about the new committee that's been established in relation to SC14 and the PG for contaminants. The new ISO technical specification, that is very new. It's only been just approved by the committee, by the project group, and has been loaded on the ISO Live link and will be discussed in London next week when we've got our ISO meetings on. And what can we learn and how can we make a difference? So I'm going to sort of try and cover off on some of those things. So during the presentation, if you've got questions, please put your hand up. Let's try and deal with the questions as we go, the best we can. If I walk around a little bit, don't get too nervous. I've had a knee replacement about 13 months ago, and it still gives me a little bit of grief, so I've got to move around or sit down or something. So they say that they're good, but good for some and not so good for others. So, right, who is AFAC? So we're the National Council for Fire and Emergency Services. I'm sorry if everyone can't see properly. So we're the National Council for Fire and Emergency Services. We're a world respected leader and trusted partner with the government. In actual fact, our organisation is responsible for engaging with and working with the federal government, who supply funds to provide all the aerial firefighting activities. So all the aeroplanes, helicopters, everything, all those resources are managed through our organisation with funding divided between the federal government and the local fire services themselves. So it brings together and collaborates from across the jurisdictions, and it's a non-for-profit organisation. It is, our work is a synergy through collaboration, and of course we have committees established across the organisation to deal with a whole range of things. What I'm going to try and do is just drill down a little bit so that you can understand where I guess my responsibility comes into play and how this all links in relation to firefighter safety and PPE. So across the AFAC and across our collaboration model, we have 35 committees in total, 15 technical groups, 15 groups, 12 technical groups, and 8 what we call networks. There's about 1,000 individuals that participate across those committees representing their various organisations, and more than 115 meetings are held per year. So it's quite a lot, and they're not always held in Melbourne. They're scattered across the country as well. This is the framework that we actually operate under. This is our framework, and you'll see there's this red circle around that end down there. That's my directorate that I'm responsible for. And of course, within that directorate, we have what we call the Collaborative Procurement and Business Strategy Group. That group is has overall responsibility across the organisation for all those activities. Underneath that, we have our PPE technical group, we have our fleet technical group, we have our operational equipment technical group, and then of course we have what we call a network in relation to standards representatives. So we have a large number of standards representatives made up from the agencies that actually represent our organisations on those Australian international committees. in total within my directorate, so I've got 5 committees, 1 group, 3 technical groups and 1 network, 121 individuals, and they report up through to that main group. I have a small team that works with me. We also work together to put on the AFAC conference every year, and for those who have ever been to the AFAC conference would be aware that the trade show aspect of it is massive now, absolutely massive. And if you ever get a chance to go, next year in Sydney it's on, or this year, sorry, in Sydney it's on in around the end of July, August. It's worth going to, and those people in the room that have been before would to make a testament to that. So we have representation, and we play a key role in a whole range of areas. You can see Standards Australia there, and ISO, the Joint Australian New Zealand Standards Committees, NASH, NFPA. Both myself and Dave Matthews, who you may know, and a lot of you would know, are the only ones outside of North America that sit on the NFPA correlating committee for PPE. So we actually bring an international perspective to the work of NFPA as well. This is something that one of my, she works for me, but I say I probably work for her. She's just absolutely fabulous when it comes to the organisation and what she does, and she's so well respected and supports me. We have what we call the standards wheel, and that wheel identifies all the different standards committees that we actually sit on across the various, whether it's Australian standards committees or ISO committees, and they are, and it's a good, like a ready reckoner for people, so that they can actually look at and see what committees we're involved with, and then you can drill down to that to find out who the representatives are. In this case, we have more than 55 committees and 41 representatives drawn from those AFAC members. So the standards representatives, they have certain responsibilities as well, and this is what I put into place many years ago now when I left the fire service and continued on with AFAC. We have representatives that are required to abide by the guidelines that we've actually established, and they assisted in writing those guidelines, so they have a commitment to those as well. They've got to attend all the standards meetings and participate in a constructive and a professional manner. They've got to identify if they can't attend a meeting, so somebody else can actually attend in their place. It's so important that we have somebody sitting at the table representing our industry on all those committees. Ensure that the position of AFAC is taken. So it's not a position of an individual, it's a position, it's the collective view of our members. And we make sure that that view is put forward, and the position will be as determined by the relevant AFAC group that it actually reports back up through to. So that's an important aspect of what we do there too. Introduction to the relevant standards. I'm going to get into a little bit in relation to those standards. In particular, I'll talk a little bit about ISO standards, NFPA standards, and the SEN standards. As I identified there's 14 relevant international standards that I've identified, put into a simple table that you'll be provided with. The information on that table is nothing that you couldn't go and find by searching on the website yourself. But what it does is it gives you the title of the standard, it gives you the number of the standard, and it gives you what the scope is. As I said, you can actually draw that information. But what I've done in the further column I've added for you is basically where that standard sits at the moment currently in relation to the process of whether it's actually just a published standard, it's being revised or it's being looked at or whatever. And I've done that for you as well, because I think sometimes the hardest thing is when you're going to tender or you're preparing specifications, etc., like I do within Australia for our fire services, is knowing what standards to look for. And if you've got that bit of guidance there, then that helps you to start with, and then you can say, well, that's the one I need. I'll go and buy that one, and then I can actually look at that in greater detail. This is the framework of what I've actually put together for. This is one standard, so this is what we call 21808, which is the guidance on selection and use of personal protective equipment. Again, we'll be talking about that one next week. You can see the scope. I've copied the scope there, and being prepared for publication following the latest revision. So that's the sort of information you'll see, and you'll have 40 standards that I've actually identified, and you'll have all that information. I thought it might be useful to you. So how should the standards be used? And some of you would know this, and perhaps I'm just telling you something you already know, but I think it's something that we should always remember, is that in relation to PPE standards, how they should be used, the PPE manufacturers, of course, in consultation with the supply chain, to produce the PPE required to standard and industry specification. That's what's required. Independent certification bodies validate compliance and license the manufacturers. You hear me talk about independent, and I talk about independent bodies a lot. We in our country will not utilise a testing body or a certification body that are not independent, and in actual fact we will not accept test reports and a certification certificate that comes out of the same testing or certification body. And I know that occurs over here, but we will not allow that to happen in our country. So in normal circumstances, the use of a standard leads to a product that the end user can be assured is fit for purpose. I would say that it is what we aim for. The unfortunate part to that, and the reality of that these days, is it's lost its way. And it's lost its way because some people that participate at an international level are not focusing on what is right for the firefighters. There's too much self-interest involved, and self-interest is actually delivering what I believe to be standards that take our firefighters back 20 plus years. So, and we'll use some examples when I get to that today. So how are the ISO PPE standards developed for our fire and emergency services? Well, back in 2001, TC94 SC14 was established. That's the International Committee for Firefighters PPE. That was established. I was there on that day when it was established, and fortunate to say that I'm still there now. The TC94 SC14 has been established specifically to deal with the unique requirements of firefighters PPE. It was actually written into our requirements that the scope of the work of the committee was to actually develop standards, but based on the risk assessment and based on the hazards that firefighters actually face. It only covers PPE, so we can't write standards that don't cover PPE or are related to PPE as such. So that's what we do. Under the scope of SC14, as you can see, the standard for firefighters PPE is developed with a particular aspect of emergency response, whether that be hazmat, whether that be rescue, whether that be structural firefighting, wildland firefighting, CBRN. So it covers all the aspects, and we have different working groups that are established to actually deal with all those things. And we have a number of our working group conveners and then project leaders, Dave Matthews was here talking to you previously. Dave is the convener of two of our working groups and is actually taking over from me as chair of TC94 as my 9-year appointment ends at the end of this year. That's the area of responsibility I have in relation to ISO standards. That, as you can see, up the top, that's where I sit. So I have responsibility for all those working groups and subcommittees, right through from foot protection to eye protection, protective clothing, firefighters PPE, and respiratory protection as well. I have a chairman's advisory group. I've also, since I took over, have established two working groups. One is dealing with compatibility of PPE across all aspects of compatibility. The other is dealing with head protection. They're both meeting next week. The old standard in relation to the head protection, which is the old construction type helmet, which is used by many organisations across the world, and is nearly 25 years old. It's just outdated and needs to be updated. So we are getting there, and we're almost there in relation to that. So that is happening. And then, of course, personal equipment for protection against falls. We were struggling in that area. It was actually called SC4. It actually sat in here, and it was a subcommittee that dealt with all aspects of the personal equipment, protection against falls. Unfortunately, the convener and the secretary were from a country that were not participating the way they should, weren't supported by the members of the committee, and therefore couldn't get any work done. So basically I sacked them and moved on and took over the committee and put it under what we have there, TC94, and they've just held their first meeting in years and are moving ahead. So, and representation is growing. So, so we either get on with things, get them done, or we look at another way of doing it. So, what are we doing to reduce firefighter exposures? Now we're starting to get into some of the other stuff that I want to talk to you about today. The next few slides will focus on who is we, what are we not doing, which is just as important, I think. What is being ignored, what's being done, what should be done or should be doing, and key considerations. I'll work us through those bits and pieces. So, Andy, keep an eye on the time if I'm taking too long wherever you are. Yeah. Okay, so who is we? Well, we is ISO TC94, of course, that's the committee I'm responsible for, so that's me. Also SC14, and the National Mirror Committee, which are committees within countries where they are supposed to have what we call a National Mirror Committee. So just explain that a little bit because it's important. So within the UK, within Standards Australia, we have mirror committees that are established to mirror, whether it's SC14 or TC94, that ensures that the comments and the work that is done is fed up through and you get it back in both directions. So that's a really important aspect. That doesn't happen in every country. And unfortunately, to the detriment of the... I'm just wondering, Andy, could we turn the lights down a bit, or if that, it might, that would, yeah, that's a lot better, yeah, really good. I know some of these slides might be a little bit hard to look at, so you're not going to unplug me, are you?
No. Okay.
I'm not that bad, surely. We need to have a refocus on those national committees because my concern is that, particularly in relation to the firefighters, they're not getting the say, they're not getting the input that should occur up through the mirror committees up to the ISO level. The AFAC, like AFAC is a we, of course, and the National Fire Chiefs Council is, the fire agencies themselves, and industry, those who represent industry, whether they're manufacturers, suppliers or whatever, they're all we. So it's important we understand that. We are, unfortunately, not recognising the impact of firefighter exposures and need to act now. And I make no apologies with that. Somebody suggested I was being a little bit harsh. I'm not harsh, and I'm not here to make friends in relation to those aspects. We need to act now, and it's because of that some of the actions I've actually taken. Allowing vested interests to driving an agenda that has the potential to see a reduction of performance of requirements to that of 20-year-old standards. And that is a disgrace. Not recognising that fire services and firefighters have a legitimate role in the development of PPE standards and must be consulted in the process. Seeing international PPE committees dominated by business with minimal or no representation from end users. That has to change. We're ignoring what has previously been validated as legitimate and appropriate performance requirements, just again to actually achieve certain aspects of what they want to see happen. What's being ignored? This is an example, and it's one of my bugbears. It really is, and those who know me, I don't let go of this one. This is a real issue for me. Data submitted by Australia provides evidence that a pass of greater than a HTI of 7, and apologies if I'll get into a little bit what that is in a minute, but a heat transfer index of greater than 17 and an RET of, which is about your breathability aspect, less than 19 can be achieved consistently. That is fact, and that has been backed up on so many occasions. There's a ISO standard, ISO 11092, that actually talks about what we're supposed to be achieving and what is recognised as being those achievements. As you can see there in green, 13 to 19 is something classified as being satisfactory, breathable. 20 to 29 is unsafe and unsatisfactory. Well, a lot of the garments around the world, they actually sit in that 20-29 category, and that is totally unsatisfactory as well. 30 plus, well, absolutely dangerous. So what we're saying, just because we don't sit within the Europe, is no excuse for Australia's best practice to actually be ignored, and so we're pushing that home. This is what we talk about so you'll actually understand when we talk about RET. So it's the measurement of resistance so basically, if you get into talking about your RET, the figure you're looking for is the lower the figure, the best performance. So the lower it goes, the best breathability you're going to get of the garment in relation to your HTI. The higher the figure is the better outcome in relation to your thermal performance. Yeah? But what you've got to do, the tricky part is to find the balance between that. Because if you focus on one or the other, you're going to end up with an outcome that's going to be not satisfactory. So it's going to be compromised somewhere. So that's the balance you have to find. This is, and I'll use this as an example of one of the many technical analyses that I've actually done while working with the fire services, helping them do their tenders and specifications. As you can see there, and this is part of the data that I've actually submitted through to ISO, that in my opinion was absolutely ignored and still has been ignored. And you can see there some of the figures in relation to your HTI in green. You're achieving really good outcomes in relation to your thermal performance, and balanced with, we're achieving outcomes of 12, 14, 15 in relation to your RET. Absolutely achievable. These garments are highly performing garments that you could actually use in this country and perform extremely well. In actual fact, and they're to our Australian standard, what we call AS/NZS 4967, in your country you have, and parts of Europe as well, you manufacture your garments to, or they are manufactured to what we call EN 469. You would be aware of EN 469. But they're actually not manufactured to the minimum performance requirements of EN 469. They actually would pass the Australian standard. And it's one of my biggest bugbears about EN 469. It's not realistic. It's actually a standard that's actually written, and if you actually took the true word of the standard and manufactured it to that level, which is basically a HCI of 13, unless it's changed, I don't think it is, you could go in, without doing your risk assessment, you could go into a fire, a structure fire, with a garment that's not going to provide the level of thermal protection that you need. I wouldn't want to go in, definitely not. So it's a bit ridiculous. And Dave Matthews and I usually have a good argument about that over a glass of wine or something or other, because he knows my view on that. So this is just giving you an example. We do our due diligence. We do our work. When I did the last New South Wales Fire and Rescue study tender, I did 20 different combinations where I had to do an analysis of all the performance requirements to make sure that we actually came out with, and I don't make decisions about outcomes. I give them a range of compositions that are put forward, and then they take them to field trials and make the decisions from there. So that's giving you a bit of an indication. So what's being done? The World Health Organization you'd be aware of that organisation. They've now reclassified firefighters to Group 1. That's the highest level that you can actually be classified, and that's the most dangerous of all. TC94 I provided after this occurred, and after coming back from an ISO meeting in Greenville last June, where I came back with a very knotted up stomach and very disappointed about what had occurred and how it went on. I actually used my role as chair of TC94 to provide direction to SC14 to do something about this. What we will talk about in a minute is in relation to the PG and contaminants, SC14, and of course the Secretariat communication to international fire chiefs. I'll talk about that as well. So here's what the WHO said. That's exactly what they did. They had 8 countries. They met in Lyon, 25 international experts, and of course they reclassified the firefighters. So that was a significant move forward and a significant recognition. We know this, and those who have been involved in this for a while will know and understand the number of different cancers related that exist and have been popping up for some time now, and we need to, it's really sad, but we need to acknowledge that they are there so we can learn from this process and learn about how we can actually improve to reduce the exposures to firefighters. Presumptive legislation. I think you have presumptive legislation in the UK. No, you don't have it in the UK. Okay, so it's certainly a right across Australia, across the US, and I'm hearing talks about it being introduced in other parts of the world, including Europe. The legislation currently covers off on a number of different cancers, and of course these are the primary ones that are there at the moment that are listed on the presumptive legislation, and of course I have no doubt that more will probably follow as well. The directive that I gave in relation to SC14, I explained the decision that the World Health Organisation made, and I said that SC14 must act now, can no longer ignore the risks to firefighters. Everything possible must be done to reduce these exposures. The direction is for SC14 must take all possible steps to prevent these exposures to firefighters, and they must ensure PPE standards are developed with a concerted effort addressing all possible exposures identified by the World Health Organisation. That's something that we've done, and within a short period of time we've been able to move on some of this. We've actually, from my direction, the chair of SC14 then provided a direction to the working groups under its responsibility. A working group has been under Dave Matthews leading as a convener of Working Group 1. We've established a project group. That project group is chaired by an Australian firefighter. It has a balanced membership of firefighters and others, so not everyone can just join. It has restricted in numbers, and it was established in August 23. Now, it's been dealing with a lot of work already and hit the ground running, and of course one of the first things it needed to do was to develop a technical specification. That has been now tabled, and it will actually be discussed next week. And the title is Personal Safety, Personal Protective Equipment Guidance on Reducing the risk to firefighters from hazardous chemicals and physiological impacts. So that has actually occurred already. And of course the scope of that document is to provide guidance reviewing all ISO SC14 standards, so all standards that are currently out there now, published, or being revised, are to be reviewed pertaining to the PPE for firefighters, make recommendation to address identified shortfalls, provide guidance that can assist in reducing such exposures to firefighters, and develop a roadmap to enable the tracking of key milestones while overseeing this important work. The technical specification, as I said, has been written. It actually it considers data and documents collected by the PG Contaminants Group, determine which are useful and how they can be used, ensure that the standards that are under development are addressing the risks faced by firefighters, if not make recommendations to SC14, and review all current standards under SC14 responsibility. The specification also delves into engage with fire services through National Fire Service Councils regarding education, issue of PPE to recruits, training including PPE compatibility, use and limitations, operational considerations, education of ISO 23616 requirements. For those who don't know, and we'll talk about a little bit in a minute, is the cleaning and maintenance, the cleaning and decontamination of PPE, clean station and cab policy, health surveillance, physiological impacts, ongoing health management programs and medicals throughout a firefighter's career, road and record keeping for health medical checks. A lot, isn't it? But we've started, so which is good. The essential considerations, of course, in the document cover off on PFAS and PPE, PFOA, PFOS, asbestos and respirable fibres, innocuousness requirements, physiological impact on firefighters, data considerations and availability, standards review, engaging with fire services and employee organisations, firefighter education and training, operational considerations, 23616 implementation, cleaning and decontamination, fire station best practice, PPE design, health surveillance and record keeping, chemical protection compatibility, and what actions can we take as a firefighter. That's all covered off in the document. The recommendations are basically that a concerted effort must be taken by all parties concerned to engage with fire services and their employee organisations such as unions and associations to ensure that all possible steps are being taken to reduce exposures to firefighters through workplace chemicals and other related carcinogens. It is recognised that PPE alone cannot be the only means of reducing these exposures to firefighters, and the fire services must play a role in this as well as being reviewing their own policies and procedures. Employee organisations must also work with the fire services and ensure that the firefighters, by identifying opportunities where they can work collaboratively in the best interest of firefighter safety. I also wrote on behalf, which was actually signed off by my CEO, I wrote to a number of the international fire chief associations across North America, Europe and UK, and explained some concerns that I had, and this all happened after the meeting we had in Greenville, and that is that we've written to them, we've asked them to increase their representation and in a lot of cases actually get more involved. It's not such an issue in the UK because you are actually well represented. Consultation with fire services regarding new and updated standards, not happening in Europe as far as I know, and promote the benefits of participating on the ISO committees and ensure that a balance of representation is there and engaging with and collaborating with others worldwide. Had some responses already and really positive responses that they want to work with us internationally to achieve this. The aim of this is to take control back away from those with self-interest to those should be representing firefighter safety. What should we be doing? Well, introducing new standards based on best practice. That's what we should be doing. That's a good start. So 23616, which is the cleaning and maintenance one, if you've not read any standards, that's one that you should be reading. And it's an important one. It's actually under revision at the moment, but I'm fairly confident under the leadership that it has, that it will actually go through next week and then go forward to the final stage of balloting. I think will be an excellent outcome. So the purpose of the document, as you can see there, is to provide guidance and recommendations in relation to the cleaning, inspection and repair of firefighters' PPE. It's what we call the equivalent of 1851, NFPA 1851. This is a far better standard than 1851. this standard is one that you can use, you can work with. It's a more common sense approach, and it's not going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement the way that it can be with 1851. So part of 23616 is in relation to your clean workplace and procedures and the fire service operations and how they operate. We have procedures and processes in place. Fire services is good at developing the policies and procedures, etc. What we've done is gathered some of that across the world, put recommendations together in relation to how you can actually improve some of those situations, so that you can actually have a bit of a list that you can go through to make sure that you're covering off on all those aspects. 21808, and we mentioned that before, that's the document that's guidance on the selection, use and protective equipment. That's a useful document as well. It's an excellent document because it actually it provides you with a document that you can actually look at, go through doing an appropriate risk assessment as well. You can actually then determine which is going to provide you the best protection for your firefighter by going through that process. The risk assessment itself is a good one. It's been around for a long time. It's had some modifications. We've been able to utilise it. It's in our documents, and it actually takes you through step by step of what we should be looking at in relation to doing an appropriate risk assessment for the type of PPE that you want to supply your firefighters. 20141 was only published now going back a couple of years, and it's a good document, and it provides guidance on compatibility of PPE, so how your protective clothing works with your gloves, works with your helmets, works with your flash hood, your boots, etc. So that it covers the whole compatibility aspect. But it also reminds people that you've got to be able to also look at compatibility of performance. So in relation to your performance, you don't want to be wearing a fire coat that has a different level of performance to your fire overpants, as an example. What can we learn and how can we make a difference? Improved performance requirements and standards based on validated testing that align with the risks firefighters are exposed to. Improved education, procurement development of specifications and evaluation processes. I get involved with the fire services at home all the time and help them write their specifications. We need to work together to actually improve that. Appropriate cleaning and maintenance procedures. Listen to what the science is telling us about firefighters' exposures. Generate a better understanding about the impact of PFAS and PPC, and not react unnecessarily. There's a lot of information to take in. Encourage manufacturers to become more innovative and help drive our industry in the right direction and not become complacent. What steps can we take so we can learn from the experience and commit to working collaboratively? Seek to understand what science is telling us. Acknowledge there are limitations. However, this should not stop us from pushing the boundaries to find solutions. Have a passion to protect firefighters. Protecting firefighters is also protecting their families. And establish succession planning for the future experts to continue the challenges ahead, because there's many of them. Some key considerations. My opinion, key considerations you should be looking at. Select PVC that has a moisture management system compliant with the requirements of your relevant standard. Select a flash hood with particulate protection in accordance with ISO 11999. I'm saying that not because I'm sitting in a room today, because Andy sells flash hoods with particulate protection. I'm saying it because I've said it for a long time. Evidence tells us that particulates and the transfer of contaminants go through the neck, into the neck. We need to prevent that. All our firefighters in Australia now utilise flash hoods with particulate protection. Doesn't increase their heat stress or their heat load, because we buy good quality protective hoods that actually are breathable and provide the level of protection required. Make sure that PPC has Water vapour resistance of less than 19. That's a must. And in actual fact, if you can drive that down further, even better. The PPE is of the correct size and fit for both male and female. And firefighters have access to it all the time. Ensure compatibility of all items of PPE, including the compatibility of performance. Remove the PPE, PPC immediately after exposure, requires procedures for removal. That's all in 23616 as well. Ensure appropriate cleaning and PPE is undertaken in accordance with ISO 23616, where appropriate respiratory protection as identified by the risk, and of course training for the selection and use of ISO 21028.